Let's take a look at a couple of examples of functions to get a little practice and understand how to set them up and use them, and take a look at the different kinds of situations we might encounter. Let's start off with a very simple case, the now function. I know in the last video I said that functions always carry arguments, and an argument is a number or a group, and an argument is a number or a group, and an argument is a number or a group, and an argument is a number or a group, and an argument is a number or a group of numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the numbers, a range that you're going to include with or pass to the function so it can perform its calculations. There are a couple of example function that can perform its calculations. There are a couple of example function that can perform its calculations. There are a couple of example function that can perform its calculations. There are a couple of example function that can perform its calculations. There are a couple of example function that can perform its calculations. There are a couple of example function that can perform its calculations. There are a couple of examples, including now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but will include now, where there are no arguments, but we need to understand how we express that function even though there aren't any arguments. Let's go ahead and start off by, in the formula bar, by clicking on the equal sign and typing in NOW, equal sign, 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 and typing in NOW, and you'll notice that the function pops up immediately. It's suggested to us. Let's go ahead and double click on now, and you'll notice that it opens a bracket. But if we look down below here, we just see now open opens a bracket. But if we look down below here, we just see now open opens a bracket. But if we look down below here, we just see now open parentheses, close parenthesis. And what that's telling us is that this function doesn't need any arguments, but we need to have those parentheses after the function. So let's go ahead and click OK, and after. So let's go ahead and click OK, and after. So let's go ahead and click OK, and after. So let's go ahead and click OK, and after. So let's go ahead and click OK and enter. And there we have it, the date and the time. And you'll see up in the formula bar we have equals now, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. You can't just type is 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 close parenthesis. You can't just type equals now. Excel's not going to know how to handle that. It needs to have those parentheses afterwards to properly evaluate the function. Let's go on to case 2 here, the sum function. And what that is sum is one that you'll use quite often. It's going to take a group of numbers, add them up. And so I have set up a group of numbers over here. Let's go ahead and use the insert function wizard to set up this function. So I'm going to start off by typing sum, click on go, and you'll notice it's immediately selected for us. And we see down here a description of the function, sum number 1, comma number 2, comma dot dot dot. Adds all the numbers in a range of cells. So what we need to do is give it this function a range, and it's going to go ahead and add them up for us. So let's click OK, and it's asking us for number 1 or number 2. What we can do is just go ahead and select a range, and enter a range there for that group of numbers. And so I've selected I10 through L10. Let's go ahead and click OK, and we'll see that we have 84.5. And take a look up at the formula bar, equals sum, and then we have I10 through L10. So it's taking that range and it's adding up those four numbers and getting the total. So let's move on to a more complex function called the VLOOKUP function. And I've already set this up for us so we can take a look at how it's set up. It has multiple arguments. Equals VLOOKUP 104, H15 to J18, 3, and false. So we have four groups of arguments. They're all very different looking, separated by commas. I'll explain it first in plain English, and then let's go ahead using the function wizard to walk through step by step adding those arguments to the VLOOKUP function. What this is doing is it's looking at this table of data here to the right, and it's saying for the value in the first column, extension, for the value which is 104, extension 104, and then we're going to look at the range, which is this whole group of numbers here. In column 3, what is the value that matches 104? So for extension 104, what's the value in column 3? And then we have this fourth argument, false, and what that's saying is it's requiring that we have an exact match. More on that in just a moment. Let's go ahead and re-enter this same information using the insert function wizard. Let's go ahead and click on this, and we're going to notice that VLOOKUP is waiting for us down there in the recently used list. So I'm going to highlight it, and we see VLOOKUP, lookup table, table array, column index underscore num. We're still really not sure what exactly we're doing here, but let's go ahead and click OK. Let's notice once again that the function wizard brings up all the four arguments and is going to offer us some information here about how to fill out those arguments. We'll notice that since the focus is on lookup value, we do have a description down here that's fairly plain. It says it's the value to be found in the first column of the table. So we know that that's the extension value. So let's enter 103 for this example. And note that it's saying it can be a value, a reference, or a text string. So it can be the actual value that's in the cell. It could be a cell reference, for example, H16 or H17. It could also be a text string. So if we happen to be using column 2 instead, it could be Dan or Lisa instead of a number. Let's move on to table array, and we see that it's a table of text numbers in which the data is retrieved. It can be a reference to a range or a range name. So if we might have assigned a range name to this group of cells, but we can also just refer to it as H15 through J18. So then let's go down to the third argument, and we see that that is a column number in the table array from which the matching value should be returned. The first column of values in this table is column 1. So what it's saying to you is, starting with number 1, which column number are we pulling the result from? In this case, let's go ahead and say column 3, once again, the department. So we're going to match the extension with the department. And then lastly, range lookup. This is a little bit more obscure. It's saying it's a logical value to find the closest match in the first column, sorted in ascending order, equals true or omitted. Find an exact match, equal false. Well, that's not necessarily clear, in my opinion, to someone who's just getting started with Excel. The bottom line is it needs to be true, false, or you can leave it blank. If in the first case you're looking for the closest match, then you can either say true or omit it, or if you want to find an exact match, just type in false. So what do they mean by closest match? Well, I suppose if we had extensions 102, 101, 102, 103, and 104, and we typed in, and we did a search for 105, it's going to give us the closest number, which is 104, and match that to accounting. But let's go ahead and type in true, and click OK. And we'll notice that indeed, for looking up for 103, it's matching us with the row which includes sales as the department. Let's take a look at HLOOKUP. And we bring this up to show you the wide variety of functions that are available in Excel. HLOOKUP is exactly the same, it's just acting upon data presented in a different way. So the point here is that before you start putting your data into a form that your function needs to be in, make sure that you look around for all of your function options to see if there is a function choice that's going to match the data that you have. So HLOOKUP, we're taking the same data, and instead of having the information in columns, we have it in rows. So we've got extension as this particular row with the extensions going across, and likewise for name and department. And we can see that HLOOKUP up here in the formula bar is gathering arguments or requiring arguments in exactly the same way. So it's a different flavor of the same formula. And lastly, I want to take a look at pound name question mark. And what that is an error message in Excel. And you're always going to see error messages starting with the pound sign and ending with question mark. And what I've done here is added equals my function with open paren, close paren, passing no arguments. And it's saying, Excel is saying, I don't know what that function is. I'm not aware of a function by that name. So if you happen to mistype a function, such as, let's go ahead up in here and type NOWW, open and close parens, it's going to do the same thing. Now with two W's is not the same as now with a single W. So that wraps up our examples of functions.